two, three. 1, 2, 3. Let's go.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Culture in Action, presented by the Women's Independent Soccer League, as we like to refer to it as WISL. Culture in Action is a monthly web series that will explore the crucial pillars that women's professional soccer must embrace to develop a positive, inclusive cultures for players, coaches, staff, and fans alike. Each episode will feature different experts in key areas to encourage dialogue, encourage conversation about a pivotal time, not only in women's soccer, but in women's sport as a whole. Each month, we will also highlight the why behind the WISL Shield. Most people start with a what, because that's easy to communicate. Then they may discuss the how, but rarely do they start with the why. To inspire others, we need to reverse that order. We need to start with the why, the purpose, the vision, then move to the how, the values, the actions, what sets you apart, what is the differentiators, and then finally the what. What are the products, the results? So we are really looking forward to launching Culture in Action presented by WISL, and we are so excited for our first guest today. Our first guest on Culture in Action, I'm thrilled to introduce to you all, is a veteran in the soccer industry. She brings a wealth of expertise in building soccer organizations and soccer communities, and we'll focus a lot on the soccer communities. Her foundational soccer knowledge was built over 20 years as editor-in-chief and CEO of Soccer American Communications, publisher of Soccer America magazine, and the list goes on, and I will let her speak to it. Recently, Lynn was announced as WISL's managing director, where she really leads the strategy behind the league. Lynn, welcome to Culture in Action. Thank you so much for joining us.
Jenny, thanks for having us, and thanks for being our moderator this afternoon. I'm really excited to be here and really excited to be involved with WISL.
Thank you. We're excited to have you. Lynn, will you tell us a little bit about yourself and what brought you to WISL?
Sure. I am one of those soccer lifers. The only odd thing in my background is I was never either a player or a coach, but I came from a soccer family. And I have now been in what I never intended was to have soccer as a career, actually. And that was a little bit of a fluke because now I've been in soccer as a career for 40 years. I did start indeed as a journalist in Soccer America Communications, which at one time was Soccer America magazine, which was the largest print magazine for soccer in the US. That is all now digital, and covered soccer at a very high level, professional and international, and college primarily. It was a time when there was actually very little women's soccer, and it was probably a 98% male readership as well. About 15 years ago, I departed Soccer America to make a really fairly dramatic change, and I became the chief marketing officer of an organization called AYSO, the American Youth Soccer Organization. And AYSO was at that time about 600,000 children playing soccer across 900 leagues around the country. What was unique about it, it was the largest single entity organization for soccer in the country at that time for youth. And so all of its marketing was handled centrally, which was a really interesting opportunity to learn both about the youth game as well as how you market to the youth game. And then about 7 years ago, I was offered a very unusual opportunity to become CEO of United Soccer Coaches. And that's the Coaches Association, professional association for coaches in this country. It's actually the largest coaches association in the world for any sport. And it serves high school, club coaches, college coaches, and professional coaches.
And the first female CEO, might I add.
And I was the first female CEO in 80 years. So that was kind of a groundbreaking moment as well. But it was a wonderful, wonderful opportunity. And I cherished every moment of it. But I did decide sort of post-COVID and with many things to look at that the time had come to step away and do something different again. And at the end of December, I left as CEO and I actually launched a consulting practice around strategic development, which is how I met the WISL folks. I came in to help with a specific project around cultural development. And I was so impressed with what they were doing, and I was so excited about the opportunity for women in the women's game that when a larger role became available, I jumped at that opportunity. So that's how I came to WISL, and a little bit about my background. And I'm very excited to be here and very excited about the future of WISL.
Thank you, Lynn. Shattering glass ceilings along the way. It brought you to WISL. I love it. Great transition into Women's Independent Soccer League. Tell us a little bit about WISL.
Well, WISL is proudly Division II. We believe that there is a gap in the soccer pathway for women in this country between college and amateur and the highest levels of the game. In our country, it's NWSL Division I or European soccer. And yet there are 1,000 NCAA college women's programs in this country, let alone the NAIA and others. And every year, thousands of young women soccer players leave those ranks, many with the hope for a greater career in soccer. Yeah. And there are a handful of jobs that will become available each year in the NWSL and a handful of jobs in Europe. But for most, unless somebody comes in and fills that gap, there simply aren't enough opportunities. So we see WISL as being that bridge between college and amateur and those athletes' higher aspirations. But we also see it as a really exciting place to integrate with the community, to be part of the soccer pathway, and yet at the same time, really be a neighbor in each of the towns that we are in. So our players, our coaches are part of the community, and we embrace those communities. So it's an opportunity for lots more players, an opportunity for lots more communities to have professional soccer. And we think it's going to be a really important addition to the soccer landscape.
Yeah, and I love what you say about building that bridge. It's so important to have that bridge. As a former college soccer player, there was nowhere to go. The opportunities were so limited, and coming in with WISL and doing this, I think, will just provide opportunity and place for so many more women who want to continue on. Lynn, I've heard you speak a little bit before about your why. And as I mentioned earlier, it is so important to start with our why. So no doubt, I'm going to ask you about your why. Why did you get involved with WISL?
If there has been a hallmark to my career, and it's kind of part of my life, is that I want to make a difference. And I think that WISL is going to make a difference to our entire game and the opportunities for young women across America. And to be part of that really speaks to my soul in a lot of ways. I want to make a difference. That's my why.
And I love that WISL it really is a mission-driven organization and embracing the community. It's the community's league. It's the community's team, which I think speaks a lot to that. And safe to say you are making a difference continually. When we talk about culture and foundational pillars within WISL's vision and their mission, and let me just read that real quick. The WISL vision is to offer a women-driven professional Division II league that helps connect the soccer pathway for women's players to the highest professional opportunity, culture of empowerment, inclusivity, and community engagement. Those last three, I love those: empowerment, inclusivity, and community engagement. When we talk about WISL's mission, as a Division II professional women's soccer league of global standard independent soccer clubs, WISL celebrates a sense of place for every team, player, and fan. We embrace our communities as engaged neighbors. We provide inclusive, safe opportunities for hundreds of young women every season to play professional soccer in towns and cities across America, with each club celebrating with their fans what makes their home unique and special. For every player, every coach, and every staff member, WISL clubs will be a professional home that supports their well-being as a whole person. I mean, I've got goosebumps reading that. I don't know about you, but I definitely have goosebumps. Lynn, can you tell us a little bit about why culture is so important to WISL?
Well, culture is one of those things that's always so hard to define in some ways. And one of the things I believe, and I quote it regularly, is that culture is just a wish until you make it concrete. And we wanted a culture that really did address the whole person, and players, coaches, fans. And yet, as we talked about it, and this really in some ways why I was brought into WISL in the first place, was to address this issue very directly, is how does one make that concrete? How do you bring culture to life? And with that, we helped develop a 7-pillar cultural framework that is a commitment on the part of the league. It's a commitment on part of every team that comes into the league. And in fact, we wanted to ensure that every team, every owner who considered coming into WISL understood from the front end that this culture is a requirement. Everybody must commit to the culture, and they must be comfortable with it. And if that doesn't fit them, we understand, but WISL's probably not the right place for them. However, you got to be all in. And what we're finding is there's lots and lots of folks who are. So that's the reason. It's about fulfilling the whole person, the player, the coach, the fan. Each of them have to have their needs addressed sort of from top to bottom. So that's the way we tackled it.
I love that. And it's okay if they're not a fit, it's okay. But this is what's important to WISL from the beginning. And that's the promise that we ask.
Absolutely. It is the promise.
Yeah, it's a promise. Before we dive into each of the 7 pillars, I definitely want to make sure you walk us through those. But on the website, there are outside resources attached to the pillars. Can you tell us a little bit about why we have resources attached to those?
Sure. The pillars are very much our culture as a league, but we think they're important for everybody. And there's a lot of really fantastic organizations doing fantastic work around each of the areas that we're addressing. And we're going to utilize these groups, but more important in some ways is we wanted the wider soccer audience, women organizations, women players, coaches, everyone to be able to really access people who are doing these kinds of things. So our team really investigated organizations that support through their actions the pillars that we have. And we have no direct affiliation with them other than we think they do really good work. And that's why we put them there. We asked their permission to simply include them. But after that, it's really just a matter of whether a visitor to our website wants to take advantage of what those organizations have to offer. But I encourage them to do so, because what we found is they are important and valuable organizations doing important and valuable work. And I think every woman in soccer and every soccer organization will find them extremely useful.
I couldn't agree more. Safe to say culture in action right there, I think.
Absolutely.
All right, let's visit the 7 pillars, Lynn. We'll start off with safe and strong. Talk a little bit about that pillar, if you would.
Well, safe and strong for us was really having a zero tolerance policy for any bad behavior of any kind. It was to have a very clear process that players, coaches, staff, even fans would know upfront. A hotline that you can call anonymously, that what will take place is very clear and upfront, that you know how it will be handled, you know how you will be communicated with, and that regardless of what the issue is, the league will take it very, very seriously. Now, please don't get me wrong. I think every league is thinking about this in exactly the same way. We've all learned hard lessons. But again, we have the luxury, perhaps, of starting from scratch. So we wanted to ensure that it was embedded absolutely from the front end, that everybody is protected and safe, and that kind of environment is where we all want to work.
And 3 things really jump out to me in this one is follow-up, communication, and action. I think those are 3 things that have been missing for far too long. And I think those 3 really, really drive this home and make this a really, really strong pillar.
Thanks. I think that too many times in too many places, far beyond just women's soccer by far, has been the problem that a report gets made and then nothing. You hear nothing. And nothing is more frustrating or more demoralizing than that. We cannot allow that.
Yep. We're better than that. We're bigger than that. And we need to set the precedents.
Yep.
Moving on, diversity forward. Talk a little bit about that pillar.
We all absolutely believe that equity, diversity, inclusion is crucial for the good of any organization. It's what everything must be built on. And yet again, unless you actually take an action, it's easy to talk about and hard to sometimes accomplish. So what we have committed to is that for every job opening, coach, front office, head coach, positional coaches, trainers, whomever, there will be a minimum of 2 interviews done with women or minority qualified candidates. We hear all the time, oh, there's just not enough. It's so hard. The reality is you have to make the effort to ensure you're talking to people directly. Women and minorities, there are so many qualified people out there, and too often they either don't hear about the positions, they're not encouraged to apply for the positions, or for some other reason that we just can't allow to happen, they don't get those opportunities. WISL will make sure they get those opportunities.
That's a commitment.
It's a commitment.
The next pillar on the foundational pillar list is parent forward. Talk a little bit about that.
It was one of the things I saw every day in my role as CEO of United Soccer Coaches is how many coaches, particularly women coaches, ended up leaving coaching and leaving the game at the point they wanted to have families. Youth coaches who told us, I just don't get maternity leave. I have to step away. Dads who didn't get time to spend with their newborns. Couples who were, adopting a child or bringing a child through surrogate into their lives and were not being given time to make that transition. And I think we chase people away because we don't take that incredibly important part of their life seriously. So to be family forward in a league is to really, again, I think, speak to the whole person. And it doesn't matter whether you're a mom or a dad or a partner or whatever your role is in this, as a player, as a coach, we as a league need to support that part of your life. Certainly, if a player has a leave, a parental leave period during the course of their career, that can be very challenging for a coach. But I believe that we have to make the commitment again of a best practice of doing our very best to accommodate the player, to make sure that that opportunity, that career is not truly interrupted. This is a difficult one for people to understand sometimes, and yet when we were discussing this particular pillar, some of our challenge was, did we embed an exact time frame in it? And ultimately we did not. We had someone on our staff from Canada, for example, who in Canada you get 52 weeks. We had someone else on our staff who thought maybe a week or 2 would be okay. So there is lots of discussion at the team level of what makes sense and what will work, but we believe absolutely it's crucial that parent and family forward is a really important part of our league and the people who make up this league.
I couldn't agree more. And to your point, it speaks to the whole person. And that's going to go a long way. That's going to go a long way. In the club's commitment to ongoing diversity, equity, inclusion, talk about the equity leader pillar.
Equity is, again, something, equity it's all very easy to talk about DEI. It's become an acronym that everybody sort of throws off the tip of their tongue, but making it work on a day in and day out basis and having all the parties of your organization be together on it is often challenging. Yeah. We don't want it lip service. We want it to be real. So we are creating an equity council that will meet regularly, that will be really charged with taking a very hard look at teams and the league itself. On the council will be equal representation of players, coaches, owners, and management. And really it is to, spotlight the great things that teams do, to be honest and tough about lapses that we have to address, and overall to make sure that equity, diversity, and inclusion is in the fabric of what we do. It's not an addition, it's in the fabric of what we do. And every part of the league, player, coach, owner, management, we are all responsible to ensure that it happens. So that's a really important body that we have seen done elsewhere. And we know that it works. And that's something we're committed to from the front end.
And I think it's important that council that you speak of will be composed equally of players, coaches, management, owners, everything like that, because we all know equity doesn't mean equality. Those are two very separate things. So I think representing those two independently will be huge as well.
We think it's really important. And everybody's got it, and everybody's got their own perspective on it, and everybody needs to be at the table.
Yep, agreed. Talk to me about this education promise of WISL.
Well, it's twofold, but we think it's a very, very important one. Again, keep in mind who and what we are. WISL is a league of young women coming out of college in the amateur ranks. WISL might be the greatest first job ever for a soccer player. And it may be a stepping stone to higher aspirations in soccer. Mm-hmm. It may be a period of time that they stay in WISL, but it's the end of their soccer playing career. But life goes on for a very long time after your soccer career is over. And for many, when they stop playing, they really hit a wall, because that's been such a big, big part of their life since they were children. And really thinking about not just a college degree, but the entire, what am I going to be when I grow up? What am I going to do with my life? How do I make the transition to the day job? And I have seen many pro players, both men and women, really struggle with that. It's a very different new life that you have to learn about. So education and developing educational programs that address that quite directly are something we think is very, very important for our athletes, for our coaches, and for others as well. On the coaching side, we want to ensure that our coaches, we assume when we hire a professional coach, that coaching women is their expertise. However, for all of us, we all can get better at what we do. And we want to ensure that our coaches are continually getting the most current information, the best practices of coaching the female athlete. It is an important thing to stay current with what's in the industry. And we expect our coaches, with our help as a league, to stay current all the time. And we will work with partners, we will work in our own world to ensure that that happens continually. So we're really looking ahead. Coaches getting better at what they do in terms of dealing in that world, and our players and and coaches and staff as well, really looking to the future of their careers.
And when you talk about coaching, it's a lot different to coach men than it is to women. It's just because you're good at one doesn't mean you're good at the other. And it's a different beast, if you will.
Well, and it's, and at each age level, it's different. And the difference between coaching a college player and a professional player is different, female or male, but in this case, we're talking female. We want to ensure that, again, you're right, going from a men's level to a women's level is not a direct correlation, but going up and down the chain is not a direct correlation either. And quite frankly, the best coaches in the world are eternal students of the game. And I'd say that if anything, that's the philosophy of every coach that we want to promote, is that there's always room to learn. And you hear that from the greatest coaches in the world. They're learning every day. And that's what we are going to expect of our coaches.
They are. We're all learning every day in some form.
Every day.
You talk about that transition for, after done playing in college, and that's a big transition for anyone. And I think when you think of sports, it's, make sure you stay healthy, make sure you don't roll an ankle, you don't have a bum knee, but there's also this mental health that is just as crucial. And that's one of the cultural pillars, is mental wellness.
Well, and I think the way we have phrased it and think about it is really important. Everybody is very comfortable with the idea of physical illness or physical health, and that a player or any human being sometimes just needs time to get well. and needs, special attention to get well. We look at mental health, and that's part of our pillar, exactly the same as we look at physical health. It takes the same seriousness of intention to get well. It often takes time to get well. It takes an understanding. If you've ever had a physical illness that the symptoms are not super clear, but you don't feel right. And athletes have that problem often, as do all of us. Mental health it has been in the headlines tremendously, particularly since COVID. Yeah. But every team sport, every sport, and every athlete has known in their heart and in their soul that mental health is absolutely as crucial as physical health. And we have to give it, as a league, as teams, the same respect, the same time, the same attention as we would give physical health or physical ailments.
And I think being part of that conversation of removing the stigma from mental health, it's always had such a negative connotation, and it shouldn't. And I appreciate and commend that you're trying to remove that stigma, because it is time. It is time.
I think we finally, as a culture of America, have learned, and COVID helped teach us, that going to work when you don't feel good simply makes you worse and is likely to give it to the people around you. And I'm not suggesting mental health is identical in that way, but the reality is, if you have a problem, the great likelihood is if you just try and work through it, oftentimes it's worse in the end. So let's address it. Let's think about it, again, in the same way as physical health. Mental health, mental well-being is the same priority.
Yep. Getting in front of it and being proactive rather than reactive is key in this situation. Yeah. Final pillar, sustainability. We always think of, our environmental impact that we're having in our daily lives, and we need to take care of this place we call home. So talk to us a little bit about the sustainability piece.
Well, sustainability is something that, remember, WISL teams don't live in markets. WISL teams live in communities. And when you live in a community, being part of that community is ensuring that you are thinking about it in a holistic way. Mm-hmm. Sustainability is a broad brush in some ways. Mm-hmm. It can be around ecology. It can be around a variety of things. But to be a good neighbor, to be a good part of a community, our teams, our owners, our players, our coaches all need to think about, how do we take care of our space? How do we take care of the place we live, whether it's our town, our state, our world? And I think it's going to be fun, I hope, to really get creative around this, is that it is we want it to be part of our culture. If you're part of a community, you have to be a good community citizen. And I think sustainability and really thinking about, what does that mean? Does it mean how you dispose of your trash, how you water your fields, where the sources of your water come from? It's being thoughtful about garbage and how you get rid of stuff. All of us as individuals, as organizations, as companies, we have to think about it in a serious way. We want our teams and our league to think about it in equally a serious way. Again, every team is part of a community, and sustainability is what every community is working on towards, and so will we.
Of that, bringing it back to the community, and that's what the clubs are. The clubs belong to the community. So thank you. Thanks for taking us through that. Those 7 pillars: safe and strong, the diversity rule, parent forward, equity leaders, education promise, mental wellness, and sustainability. Thank you for that wonderful conversation around each of them. And I think it's safe to say, with those as the foundation for WISL, WISL is going to soar. And thanks for just talking about the why behind those and how you got there. And that those are the foundation of this new Division II professional women's soccer league. I love saying that. Lynn, Berling-Manuel, thank you so much for everything you're doing for WISL, the women's game, and just women's sport in general.
Thanks very much for having me. And I'm very excited about it. We wanted to lead with culture, and culture in action is really how that happens. So thanks very much, Jenny, for your time too.
Thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it. Please be sure to join us on our next episode, Wednesday, January 4th, where we'll take a deep dive into all things education. We'll visit the education pillar. So thank you again. This has been Culture in Action presented by WISL. Until next time, please be kind to one another. Thank you.